And this is Washington Unplugged. Bob Schieffer here, and on today's webcast, the Democrats have the votes they're going to need to begin formal debate on health care in the Senate. We'll get the latest from Nancy Cordes, who's at the Capitol. And you thought you knew how Ronald Reagan got elected? Well, I thought I did too until I read a new book about it and found out how much I didn't know. We'll talk to the author, Craig Shirley. Then Kaylee Hartung will be here with another report on Washington's younger side, today's Washington Unplugged Under 40. But first, what is next in the debate on health care? And here is Nancy Cordes at the Capitol. Nancy. And I'm hearing, it sounds like the Senate has never been in better voice down there behind you. What is going on?
Well, Bob, I know you're a music lover, so I thought we'd have a little musical accompaniment to our healthcare discussion today. Actually, they've got an opera concert going on below us here at the Russell Rotunda, so I'll try to speak up a little bit.
My sense of it is that once this debate gets to the Senate floor on what are we going to do about health care, they won't be, and it won't be quite as musical or quite as pleasant. Where are we on this right now, Nancy? I mean, people say they're about to begin debate on health care. I thought there'd been a debate for a couple of years going on about this, and I think a lot of people do too. Just tell us what's going to happen in the next couple of days.
Okay, well, what we're looking at is tomorrow the Senate will hold its first vote to begin debate, official debate, on the final Senate health care bill. The House passed its version 2 weeks ago. Now the Senate is looking at its version. Senator Harry Reid needs all 60 votes, that's everyone in his caucus, 58 Democrats and 2 independents, to vote yes tomorrow on that rare weekend vote to begin actually bringing the bill to the floor so they can discuss it, amend it, and then he'll need 60 votes again to cut off debate at the end. He wants to hold this vote on a weekend because he wants to get that win under his belt before all these senators leave for Thanksgiving recess and don't see each other again for another week or so.
So how many votes do you think he has right now?
Well, right now, he and other Senate Democratic leaders seem very confident, more confident than they've been in the past few days, that they will get those 60 votes, at least to start debate. In fact, just a few minutes ago, I got a press release from Senator Ben Nelson, who's one of those few remaining moderate holdouts who were kind of wavering on this bill, saying that in fact, he will vote yes for the motion to proceed to begin that debate tomorrow. He was one of the people that we were looking at very closely because if any one of them, if he or Senator Lincoln or if Senator Landrieu or even Senator Lieberman of Connecticut voted no, then they'd really be up a creek. They'd have to go back to square one.
So by my count, I think he has 58 votes right now that he can count on, and we still have Senator Lincoln from Arkansas. Has she let us know yet how she's going to vote? Because I know she was one of the last holdouts.
We're getting smoke signals from just about everybody at this point that in fact they will vote yes to actually start this debate in motion. They're not saying how they'll vote in the end, but the consensus seems to be, hey, why not at least start debating it? Then you can bring up amendments, try to change the parts of the bill that you don't like, and then in the end you can always vote no again if you don't like what you see in the final product.
And at this point, none of the Republicans are going to vote to go ahead with this debate.
Absolutely none. In fact, they just held a press conference about an hour ago to explain all of the reasons that they hate this bill. You know, you used to hear people talking about how Democrats and Republicans agreed on about 80% of what's in the bill. Oh my, we're really going to a crescendo here right now. You know, that they agreed on 80% and disagreed on 20%. Well, it certainly doesn't seem like they agree on 80% anymore. Republicans are slamming this bill for everything from its length, about 2,000 pages, to its cost, $850 billion over 10 years, which they say is financial gimmickry anyway. They say if you look at the real cost, it's more like $2 trillion. So there are a host of things they don't like about this bill. I'd be very surprised if any of them voted for it.
All right, so we'll know the bottom line here Saturday night about whether the Senate is going to proceed. Democrats cautiously optimistic at this point. And Nancy, I want to thank you for having the presence of mind to make complete sentences while you've got
this may be a first on Washington
the grand finale of an opera going on right beneath you there. Well, thank you very much.
Very dramatic
Nancy.
Issue.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to turn to something else now. There have been hundreds of books written about Ronald Reagan. And this is a question that always irritates an author. Why do we need another one? Well, you don't have to get very far into Craig Shirley's new book about Reagan to know that, yes, there was still a lot we didn't know about Reagan and how he came to the White House. Craig Shirley is with us here. His book is Rendezvous with Destiny. This is your second book about Ronald Reagan. How long did it take you to put this together?
Almost 4 years.
Almost 4 years.
I turned the manuscript in January, and it was actually 1,700 pages, so 1,000 pages were edited out. So about 1 year of my life of writing went into the ether.
What did you turn up that surprised you? I mean, there's a number, and your publicity people have sent out a whole page of little nuggets here that are in this book. What do you think is the biggest thing that we didn't know about this?
Bob, I think the biggest thing was that how much the Republican Party establishment was opposed to Reagan's nomination in 1980. They favored Howard Baker, they favored George Bush, they favored John Connally, but not Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan had taken on the establishment of the Republican Party starting in 1977, and he talked about a new Republican Party that could not be the party of the corporate boardroom, could not be the party of the country club. It had to be the party of the man on the street, the cop on the street, the homemaker, the entrepreneur, but it had to be the party of the individual. He was a populist conservative, and that was a threat to the established Republican order, and they set out to stop his candidacy very early on. As you recall, going after the age issue, which was shot through every story in 1979 into early 1980, that Reagan was just too old to be president of the United States.
Well, he almost got the nomination. He almost wrested it from Gerald Ford in '76. He came within just a handful of votes of getting the nomination.
59 delegate votes, that's right.
And that's when the establishment really got upset with him, because a lot of them felt that had he not made that, made that run, that Gerald Ford would have beaten Jimmy Carter.
Gerald Ford went to his deathbed convinced that Ronald Reagan cost him the election. But Dick Cheney, who was then Gerald Ford's chief of staff, would tell you that Reagan actually helped Ford become a better candidate and got their flaccid campaign operation into shape so that they were able to take on Jimmy Carter and actually make a race of it.
One of my favorite parts of the book is the 1980 convention, where Henry Kissinger turned out to be kind of the mastermind behind it. They tried to get the vice presidential slot for Gerald Ford, of all people, and Ford, of course, wanted to be sort of a prime minister, basically wanted to be what Dick Cheney became during the Bush administration.
Absolutely.
I'll never forget the exclusive interview that he gave to Walter Cronkite during that convention. It brought the whole convention to a dead stop. I'm told Nancy Reagan saw that and said, this is never going to happen. But what an interesting story. You have a lot of details on how that all happened.
It was an absolutely fascinating day because it goes, it was completely unscripted. They had to throw the script away for the day because you had this, what the chapter I call is Motown Madness, because it was this day of network reporters interviewing delegates and rumors being reported on network television that then were carried back to the delegates, and it just swirled out of control, so that everybody was convinced there would be a Treaty of Detroit, a co-presidency, that they would appear as a joint ticket that night before the convention. And actually it came fairly close to Gerald Ford actually going on the ticket with Ronald Reagan. A lot of people think that Reagan pulled the plug on it, but in fact it was Gerald Ford who finally pulled the plug on the whole deal.
And sitting there watching it all on television was George Bush. They had already packed their bags, they paid their hotel bills, and were ready to leave, and then the next thing you know, Reagan calls him and says, will you do it?
Gets a phone call out of the blue. He's absolutely flabbergasted, and as you recall, there was a lot of opposition inside the Reagan campaign to taking George Bush as his running mate, so he was as surprised as anybody, and as a matter of fact, didn't even have time to change when there was a crush of press that showed up at his hotel room, and he was just in a red polo shirt and been drinking a Heineken, and the press shows up.
Well, the fact was that Ronald Reagan never really liked George Bush very much until then. They later became friends, but they certainly weren't at that time.
There were philosophical differences, there were cultural differences, there was a lot of political differences. Of course, he ran against Reagan for the nomination, so yeah.
All right. Well, it's a fascinating book, Greg. Congratulations.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to have you. Now we want to talk about a more recent campaign, and that's the last one. HBO has a new documentary out about the backstory of the Obama campaign and the people who made it happen, the people in the trenches, the back rooms, most of them very young. Kaylee Hartung focuses on one of them who now works at the FCC in this week's Washington Unplugged Under 40.
A campaign is about more than just the candidate. It's also about hundreds of young people chasing their dreams.
My name is Ronnie, calling from the Barack Obama campaign here in Des Moines.
HBO's new documentary, By the People, The Election of Barack Obama, introduces us to one of them, Ronnie Cho, a confessed political junkie who put his life on hold for nearly 2 years.
And it was the best time of my life. One of the most difficult things I've ever been through, but just in terms of emotionally, intellectually, physically exhaustive work, and it paid off.
Ronnie joined the campaign just weeks after Obama announced his candidacy.
Very fortunately, I got a call from Mitch Stewart, who was our Iowa caucus director and a hero of mine, and he said, "You want a job?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "When can you be here?" I said, 2 weeks. And he says, "All right, well, it's going to be a great ride." And that was just probably the biggest understatement he's ever said. Yeah.
He left his job in Arizona's Department of Commerce, where he worked under another early Obama supporter, Janet Napolitano. And he started where most young people do, at the bottom of the totem pole.
One of the first scenes that we see you in the documentary, you say half the battle is just getting people to know who he is.
I remember begging people to come see him at a house party next door, and they weren't sure if they wanted to go, they didn't think he had a chance. And then you see in this mall, just, this past January, packed with millions of people. We've come a really long way.
And HBO was along for the ride. The cameras first met Ronnie in Iowa.
Now, there were plenty of campaign staffers that those folks at HBO could have chosen to follow. Why do you think they chose you?
Ah, man, that's a great question. I don't know. I thought, all right, well, maybe I'd be in the background, or maybe there'd be one scene of me talking. I had no idea that I was going to be featured as much.
But Iowa is one place a campaign volunteer can take a starring role.
I think everyone should experience the Iowa caucuses. This is a state, and these are people who don't want to pick just a candidate. They want to pick a president.
Lucky for Ronnie, they chose Obama. So after 10 months in Iowa, he went on to Texas, Indiana, and finally Maine, getting more responsibility at every stop.
Ultimately, I got to run my own state and hire my own staff and manage the campaign in a targeted state, and I was happy to do that, and I felt proud to be a part of our victory.
And he wasn't the only one.
I'm so proud of you, how you handle and how you work, honey.
Ronnie's parents came to the United States from South Korea.
It really came from nothing. We didn't know that we were disadvantaged in any way. It wasn't the attitude my parents had. And they were always so encouraging of everything we wanted to do, and I think a lot of that has rubbed off on me, certainly has.
He took his job seriously and creatively.
Are you responsible for the choreography of the O dance?
I wish I could take credit for it. There was a fellow campaign staffer named Patrick Choquette that stole it from Will Smith and Carlton.
From
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And we just are always trying to Obamify as many things as we can.
And now he's working for the president. He's an analyst at the FCC.
A lot of us felt compelled to help the president now that he's the president, and to put your money where your mouth is. We had told Americans for a long time that we're going to help change Washington, and I want to be a part of that change. But ultimately, I think I do want to run for office one day. I do want to be in a position to help people. Maybe Doc got your show first, and then we'll build our way towards
Everyone has to start somewhere.
Ronnie did say Senator Cho has a nice ring to it, but he's only 26, so he has a couple of years to wait before he can make that big run.
I thought, Kaylee, what's so interesting is how here's a kid who starts at the bottom of this campaign and wound up managing the campaign in one of the states. Which one did he wind up running?
He was out in Maine, started on the campaign in Iowa, spent 10 months there when he was 24 years old. By the end of it, he was running the state of Maine's campaign.
We hear so much about young people who do want to make a difference, and this really underlines that if you're willing to get out there and try,
put in your time.
Put in your time. You can really make a difference in a campaign, and this is just
proof
a
of that.
Remarkable example of that. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Katie.
Bob.
Don't forget to watch Face the Nation Sunday on television when we'll talk with Senators Chuck Schumer and John Kyle about the health care debate. For the latest on the Senate vote, we'll be here. Keep on CBS. I'm Bob Schieffer.